would this morning, grab your copy of God's Word and let's go to Luke chapter number 14. Luke chapter number 14 together. Once you find Luke chapter number 14, say Merry Christmas real loud. Merry Christmas. The ones that did that, somebody escort them to the nursery. You're not mature enough to be in here yet. Got to have a quick survey here, and there is a reason behind it, because I'm trying to get you thinking about something this morning. Has anyone here who is willing to admit it started putting out your Christmas decorations or started listening to Christmas music just yet? Thank you for your honesty. There's some strength here. Once they start seeing the hands go up, people are like, yeah, I am too. I didn't know I was the only one. True, the choir, you've been doing it for a while. Y'all are just like, let's get Christmas over with. David, we love you, but we're tired of those same songs. Amen, choir. No, I'm kidding. It'll be great. I say that because I want us to start thinking about something right now. We're coming in to some of the most unique opportunities of the year as we get into what we would know as the, and please don't lynch me when I say this because I know it's a politically incorrect thing, but let me explain. As we get into the holiday season, and I'm saying that right now because I'm talking about Thanksgiving. I'm not trying to skip Thanksgiving because some of you looked at me real mean when I said that about Christmas a minute ago. Not trying to skip Thanksgiving at all. I'm grateful for all the turkeys that will make Thanksgiving Day possible. Amen? Both figurative and literal. You can fill in the gap of which one you might be. But looking forward to that as we will celebrate Thanksgiving. But then also as we go into December and get into the Christmas season and our celebration of Christmas. And here's what's unique about it, and this will happen. And I think this year is going to be more intense than it normally is just because of the climate, not the 80-degree weather that we're having climate, but just the climate of things going on around us right now. People are, just hang with me for a minute, I promise we'll get to Luke 14. People are nervous, people are scared, people don't know what's going to happen come November the 9th. We know, amen? We've got an unshakable, well, I hope, all right, let me back up. I hope that you know what's going to happen come November the 9th. It's going to be okay. And it might get a little uncomfortable for us at times. It might, the landscape of being a believer in the United States might change. That's okay because we've got an unshakable hope. Amen? We have an immovable God who will see us through no matter what happens. It does not matter. God's in control. He will take care of it and all that. I say that to say people will be open to conversations during the Thanksgiving and Christmas season that they normally are not open to. Let's be alert for that. There'll be opportunities, especially beginning the Sunday after Thanksgiving. Some of you may know that as the Advent season. Those 4 Sundays leading up to Christmas Day as we prepare ourselves to celebrate Jesus and celebrate His birth and so on. That entire month, beginning the last Sunday of November, leading all the way to Christmas Day, and we'll meet on Christmas morning together here, and we're going to celebrate communion and just have a wonderful time together that morning. We'll give you more details as it gets closer, but just so you'll be thinking in that direction. I say that to say, wonderful season of the year to invest in people and invite folks and just do this. Just say, hey, come and see. Because all of us know somebody that's a skeptic. All of us know somebody that's hurting. All of us know somebody who's maybe a little disenfranchised by the church. We talked about that in the previous week. Just tell them, say, hey, come and see. Come and see. So, come on out to 767 Pinehurst Road. That's our address here, in case you didn't know what crazy address I was giving out there. To that place known as Corinth Baptist Church and say, you know what? We're all pretty messed up in here as well, but we're trying. Amen? And that's kind of our banner, I think, that we like to wave around here is, I'm not quite where God wants me to be, but I'm getting there. And so we're doing that together. So let's do that. Let's be on alert because people will be open to it. And that kind of brings us into where we're going this morning in Luke chapter number 14. We're continuing to think on what makes a church healthy, the marks of a healthy church, and what it looks like when a church is healthy. Last week, and it actually worked out well, that all of the different sports teams that were represented got along pretty well. Didn't have anybody getting out of hand. It worked out well. I went home and took about 84 showers to try to wash the Duke off of me after I had put that shirt on. I had never, I've got to call quick time out here and tell you this, I had never before in my life done that, nor will I ever do it again. That was a one-time only. It will live because it's on YouTube now and on the church's website and all that sort of stuff. So it's out there, but it will never happen again. Just as a reminder, when biblical community is happening, remember what Paul told us there at the end as we were wrapping up, is we don't just look out for our own interest, but we look out for the interest of others, even to the degree of putting their interest higher than our own. Which, if we would be honest with ourselves for a moment, we don't like that very much. Amen? And that rolls us right in to this morning. And what we're going to think about this morning in the mark of a healthy church is if a church is healthy, a church will be making disciples. We're going to look at biblical discipleship this morning. And that's one of those, everybody just gets so excited when they hear those words. Amen? Ooh, it's going to talk about discipleship. Ooh, you get excited. I hope that by the end of the day you will be, because I'm going to take the positive and negative viewpoint of this all the way throughout it. I think in our culture today and in the church in America today, we kind of have a messed up view of what being a disciple is. And here's what I mean. This is gospel truth. I have done this now as a volunteer for a couple of years prior to being called at my first church, but vocationally being in ministry now for close to 13 years. That I've been doing this. And some of you are sitting there looking at me saying, "Preacher, I got shoes older than that." What are you talking about? There's a few things that kind of bring out after 13 years of doing this, and some of you in here are going to laugh because you'll know what I'm talking about. Here's where we are, I think, in discipling people within the church in America today. And you can just be thinking in your mind, because it become chaos if we all. Think for a moment what the number one complaint that comes across a pastor, regardless, because my title has changed multiple times throughout the 13 years of doing this, but as a pastor, as a minister, serving in a church, what do you think would be the number one complaint that would roll across our desk or across the computer screen via email or via a phone call or whatever? Just think on that for a minute. It's hilarious when you hear it. I'm going to show you. If you can't see what that is, it's a thermostat. If I could make a spreadsheet of it this morning and list all the ones and the number of times that somebody has complained, number one complaint that's ever came across my eyes in front of me, conversationally, email, text message, whatever, it was the thermostat. It was so much fun at our church in West Virginia. This is how bad it got there. We did some renovations there, and we were redoing the sanctuary and whatnot, and people just couldn't help it. The thermostats were open like these, and they would go and they'd mess with them. So we moved the thermostat. But we left the one that was out there. The screen's still working on that, but it wasn't hooked up to anything. You know what happened after we did this, and deacons and building grounds people filed this away for future reference? After we did that, people could come by and press buttons till their heart was content. We never got another complaint about it. It could have been 150 degrees in the sanctuary, and they could hit that button and nobody complained. It was amazing. Now we can laugh at that a little bit, and you can probably think of the complaints you've heard or that you've vocalized in church life, and I get it. There's things that make us uncomfortable and you want to express that. And just so you'll know, probably anything in the world that you want to complain about other than the thermostat at this point is fair game, because I don't think anybody would want to come and talk about that after this morning. But we'll talk and we'll try to work through things together. But that God kind of taught me something through that. Our view of discipleship is so low that we've placed comfort as our top priority most of the time. And I know that stings. I told you I'm going to hit positives and negatives this morning. And we got to hit some negatives before we can hit the positives. So hang with me for a minute. But if you think through in our lives, most of the time we don't get motivated to do something until we're, what? Uncomfortable. Right? We will just grin and bear it until we can't anymore. And then when the comfort's gone, then we start to do something. The view of discipleship that Jesus gives us today is probably the most uncomfortable thing you could ever hear. Now, it doesn't have the emphasis to us that it would have had to the people who were here during Jesus' time, simply because of this. And I have to deal with this up front. In Luke chapter 14, you're going to see this in just a moment when we read it together. But Jesus makes this, and you've probably heard it, you may have even had it memorized, and you probably already know the passage that we're going to look at. Jesus says, you must take up your cross and follow me. Let's let the rubber meet the road real painfully for just a moment. Except for a few weeks out of the year when we remember and celebrate Easter, the cross does not have a great impact on us right now. It's a sticker that we put on the back of our cars. It's a pendant we put on a necklace. It's a cool stamp to go on our coffee mug, and we put a cool verse underneath it, and it looks good sitting there. We need to be reminded this morning that what the cross represents is the most horrible agony in the history of the universe. Period. When we think about Christ and the cross, all of God's wrath, all of God's hatred, all of God's judgment for the sin of the world. Now let's take that statement and kind of slim it down for just a moment here. All of God's hatred, all of God's wrath, all of God's judgment for your sin and for mine was poured out on Jesus right there. Now keep in mind, and we've got to kind of hit the theological side of this for just a moment. In and of itself, a Roman cross was never enough to kill Jesus. Amen? He was too much of God for that. That's just not possible. The Bible is very clear when Jesus died that it says He gave up His ghost. The cross was not capable of that. Jesus said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And it was at that moment that He died. However, what He was experiencing there in those moments, when He hung there, when God literally turned His back on the Son during those moments, as that sin debt was being settled, it was the most horrifying thing that we've ever seen. Now, for first century people who were around physically when Jesus was here, just picture this for a moment if you could. In your mind with me right now, this is very important, especially if you're a visual kind of person like I am, this will help you much. If you can, for just a moment, but dust the cobwebs out of the way, kick the processor in gear so you can think about some things in your mind here, and picture in your mind what you think like the Mid-East region where Jesus roamed the earth would have looked like when He was there. The cityscapes, the homes, the roadways, you see the dust and the cobblestones, and you see many houses that are just kind of almost like mud hut type things, and it's very dry, it's a desert kind of thing, trying to paint a picture here for you. And as you're walking with Jesus, He stops one day and He says, hey, if you want to be my disciple, here's the only thing you got to do. Take up your cross each and every day of your life and follow me. It's very possible in many of the commentaries and historians that I've read that talk about Luke 14, say it's very possible that at the moment that Jesus was telling this, that there could have been Roman crosses within the eyesight of the disciples with people hanging on them. Common scene during this day. Literally, within the Roman Empire, tens of thousands of people died on crosses. It was a daily event. But people would see that, and they saw the horror, and they saw the agony, and all these sorts of things. So I'm hoping that you will see this morning, as we read this passage in just a moment, that there's a big push here. That discipleship is more than what we give it credit for being sometimes. So Luke chapter number 14, picking up at verse number 25. You can look there with me. Luke chapter 14. Verse 25 of Luke chapter 14, the Bible says, Now great crowds accompanied Him, and He turned and said to them, all right, let's hit the pause button right here for a moment. And this will be something else as we've thought on the church being healthy in a spiritual sense, in a relational sense, in a numeric sense. Many times, and this kind of goes contrary to us today, many times the Bible says that great crowds follow Jesus. And by great crowds, at times they're thinking, theologians and commentators say at times these crowds might have been as much as 20 to 25,000 people that were following Jesus around. We don't really know how many it is right here. We just know that it was a great crowd. It was a very large mass of people. Usually, and we'll see this right here, just file this away, so we'll come back to it in just a few minutes. Usually when this happened, Jesus did just the opposite of what we do in the modern day church today. Jesus tried real hard to run them off. He would always try to push them away. He was always trying to get them pushed out. And for a long time I thought, why would he do that? And then a dear preacher friend of mine said this to me one day. He was talking about the call to be a preacher, the call to the pastorate, and doing that. And he said one of his professors in Bible college told him this one time. He looked at the class and was talking to the entire class. He said, boys, if you can do anything else and be satisfied, close your books and go do it. If anything can talk you out of being a pastor, go do that thing. Don't go down this road. Jesus is doing the exact same thing here. If I can talk you out of following me, just go do that. Just go. The great crowds began to follow him. Verse number 26 now. If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going out to encounter another king in war will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? And if not, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So therefore, any of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. So Jesus gives us kind of the conditions here for being a disciple. First thing that we want to do here before we get in to your sermon guide there, the word disciple that Jesus uses right here several times, it means a learner or a pupil. A learner or a pupil. Now there's something that we have to address when we say that though. Because being a learner is just more, and the educators in the room better say amen when I say this, being a learner is more than just having some knowledge. Right? Now, all right, with the blank stares going on, knowledge without the ability to use it is really not knowledge in the first place. Knowing facts is not all that good. Amen? Just say for a moment, and I'll kind of look at it from this way for just a moment. If I were to say to you whatever the dimensions of this picture frame are, and tell you what the dimensions of them are, tell you its width across here and its height right here, I can tell you what angle the joints are cut at and all these sort of things. I would dare say, and please don't take offense to this, the vast majority of us in this room, with just those simple measurements, the knowledge of it, would not be able to replicate this frame. Amen? Like mine would come back with duct tape and popsicle sticks and some super glue. Amen? Right, folks? Now there's a few of you that you would take those dimensions and you would come back and it would be like the Picasso of frame making. Right? Because some of you can work with wood because you've had hands-on experience with us. Others, as soon as you heard the saw flip on, you'd be like, no, I like my fingers. I'm done. I'm not going near it. So mere knowledge does not make one a pupil or a learner. If you notice something here, and just kind of for fun here for just a moment, if you'll notice as Jesus is explaining this, he's just going throughout everyday life. He's just out and about. It's not like he stopped and said, hey, we're going to have Bible study here together for a few minutes, and I'm going to tell you what it means to be a disciple. They're just walking together, and Jesus begins teaching this. It's just happening as life is going on. So when we see this word disciple comes up, it's an active word. It means you're an active participant, not just merely having knowledge. And so what does it mean to be a disciple? I'm going to give you 3 conditions that Jesus lays forth for us right here. Firstly, and if you'll look here with me, we're going to see that a disciple has an unrivaled love. An unrivaled love. In the passage that we read here, there's a statement that comes up 3 times. 3 different moments, Jesus gives a condition, and then followed by that condition, he says, if this condition is not met, he cannot be my disciple. He cannot be. Look at verse 26. We'll see the first time that it comes up. He says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, and yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Great. And I have to be very careful right here for just a moment, because it's many times, and I was warned by this, Dr. Paul Sorrells, who was our English professor at Fruitland, and it's hilarious. I thought I had a decent grasp on the English language until I sat in his English class, and then I realized, man, I'm just a complete moron, because he showed me stuff in English that really nobody even needs to know. English teachers plug your ears for it, because nobody ever uses that. But one thing that Dr. Sorrells taught us, and he always warned us, he said, boys, he said, whenever you're preaching, he said, don't get up there and say, they translate this into the English this way, but that's not the right way to translate it. Because then it will creep doubt into people, and they'll be reading the Bible and say, well, is this translated right, and all these sort of things. The word hate right here is translated correctly. There's a bigger picture that comes with it, though. Jesus is not saying, I will use this for a moment. Here's what Jesus is not saying. This past week, Tammy and I celebrated 15 years of marriage. If nothing in the world proves God's faithfulness, it's the fact that after 15 years I'm still standing here and she hasn't killed me. It's just common fact. Some of the husbands are like, man, I can track with that, I know what you're saying. But we've been together 15 years. Jesus is not saying that if I love him more, instead of loving my wife more, that I'm going to begin to hate her. You know, I've never came after having a Bible study or having my quiet time or a prayer time or any of that, and just looked at him and said, you know, I love Jesus a lot more, just not you. You know, everybody here knows what would happen if I did that, don't you? Some of the husbands are looking at me like, I'm with you. We would get the daylights beat out of us. Amen, fellas? It's not there. The word hate in the Greek right here is actually one of those, it's almost like a slang term that's used. We use a lot of them, and I was going to try, and I'm not. I was going to throw out some of the slang terms that like teenagers and younger use today, and then the different generations use, and then I thought that would be more chaotic than what we did last week with the shirts on. Right? Because do you ever hear a teenager speak, and you're like, what did they just say? But you were there once. The slang terms have changed a little over the years, but we've all kind of been there. When it says hate right here, what it's talking about is there should be a love for Jesus that is greater than the love we have for our children, for our spouses, for our fathers and mothers. There should be a love that we have for Christ that is greater than we even have for ourselves. So we can all kind of track with it for a few minutes and be like, yeah, I can say that, you know, I love Jesus more than this, more than that. But when he gets to that point saying, if you don't love me more than you love yourself, you can't be my disciple. Our love for Christ has to be an unrivaled love. It can't have anything that's even close to it. It's one of those things that when you look at your love for Christ and then you look at your love for other things, the love for Christ is so much greater that those other things sometimes don't even look like love. Does that make sense? Are we tracking this morning a little bit? Now, here's a byproduct of that, and this is why it's a condition of being a disciple. Because a natural thing, remember what we were talking about, how we grow spiritually, we grow relationally, we grow numerically? The more I love Jesus, a natural byproduct of that is the more I'm going to love my spouse, the more I'm going to love my son, and the more I'm going to love my father and my mother, the more I'm going to love my church family. Love for Christ, supremely and unrivaled, produces more of a love for other people around us. Amen? It always works that way. It even, and I'm going to have to kind of get in all of our business for just a moment. When we have this unrivaled love for Christ, it even makes us love people that are unlovable. I've never seen, and I know my life experience is shorter than a lot of people in here, and some of you will probably, even though your life experience is greater than mine right now, would say this. I've never seen a time in my lifetime where people are so divided and people are so hostile to one another and people are just so put out with each other. And really, we can even say that within the church today, that goes on greatly. And here's what I would say to that, is when we get to a point that we embrace what Jesus is saying right here, and we've got this unrivaled love, those things kind of start to go away. The differences that we have seem a little bit less important, don't they? Amen? Because when I have this unrivaled love for Christ, then I view people, and this is not us doing this. If you sit there and you say, oh man, this is something I've got to do, and I've got to get in, you can't do it. Give up. Please hear me. If it ever comes across that I'm saying, be better, do more, try harder, you missed it. That's not what I'm getting at. As you love Christ more, you will love the people around you more, even those that are unlovable. And it just kind of starts to happen. I'll tell you this, and we'll move on. I remember when I first met Christ, January 31st, 2001. I could take you back and explain the things that were vivid during that moment. I could take you back to where I was sitting. I can't tell you a great deal of what we sang or even what the pastor preached on that night. I can remember a snippet that was about 90 seconds long that just gripped my heart, and God began to deal with me in that time. Maybe some of you have a similar story, but something that happened in the days after that just kind of blew me away. Is before Christ, I didn't care for people a whole lot. Didn't matter much. Not, and you say, oh, you're not a bad person. No, I don't know if I was or I wasn't, but I can tell you this, people were just kind of to me. But something began to stir inside of me after I met Jesus. And people that never mattered before, all of a sudden I had this compassion for them. And a love for them that I didn't quite completely understand at that point. And sometimes I still don't now. I remember people from my past that had hurt me, and that I was still harboring some bitterness towards and some anger towards and all that. I can tell you, not in one moment where just like the skies parted open and angels were flying back and forth and all that kind of things, but just over a period of time as God worked in me and love for Christ grew, my hatred for them started to diminish. It didn't hear me, because some of you in here may be in that place this morning. That didn't happen overnight, church. That does not happen overnight. Amen. For people that's been hurt, know what I'm talking about this morning. Sometimes it takes a while. But the more that love for Christ builds within you, the more that hatred gets pushed out and diminishes. And a little byproduct of it, some of us sit in this place and we say, I'm hurt like that, and I'm scarred, and I can never completely be healed. Can I remind you of what the prophet Isaiah said this morning? It's by his wounds that we are healed. Amen? Let the love of Christ work in you in order to make that happen. So Jesus tells us firstly right here that if we're going to be his disciple, we've got to have an unrivaled love. But secondly here, as we move on quickly this morning, not only do we have to have an unrivaled love, but we've got to have an unceasing cross-bearing. Verse number 27. It says, whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. A common misunderstanding that we have, and I've heard people say this, you've probably heard it or may have said it yourself. Some people think of their cross to bear. I'll put quotes around it here figuratively for a moment. They might have some sort of and please, before I say this, please hear me. I'm not trying to minimize anything anyone's going through. We just have to put things in proper perspective. I've heard people with a physical infirmity, some type of sickness or illness or chronic pain or whatever, they'll say something like, this is my cross to bear. Or people that are in a situation in life that they seem like they can't get out of, or they can't move themselves from, or they're just kind of, you know the type of folks I'm talking about, just kind of dealt a hard hand. And it seems like every time they start to move forward, their legs get clipped out and they say, you know, this is just my cross to bear. That is not the complete picture of what it means to bear the cross. That may be part of it, but that's not the complete picture. Because need I remind us, and be Captain Obvious here for just a moment, when people picked up a cross and carried it to the place that it was going to be placed in the ground, they would die. It was not, and we see people all the time, and kind of lighten the mood here for a moment. Don't you think it's funny? And I think it's funny, I laugh at myself for this, because I do this so that I can kind of try to stay in shape and fight old age and all those different things. You know, we work out and we pick up heavy things and we set them back down, right? Or some of us don't pick up quite as heavy things as others and all this sort of stuff. And we do that, and we carry them around and all that, and we do that to kind of improve life and get better and all those sort of things. You ever watch somebody when they're doing that? Man, you're nuts. And the veins are popping out, and it's just like, you pay somebody to do this? You know, it's weird like that, and we do it for betterment. No one during the time frame that Jesus was here ever picked up a cross with that kind of mindset. When one grabbed a cross, or it was physically placed on you, you knew life was over. There is no coming back from this. As it was said one time, and I'll never forget this, we were taking a group of teenagers whitewater rafting, and the guide there was describing some different things that could happen on the river, and he made a statement that if you do certain things and the water starts to push over you, it's an unrecoverable position, meaning the water will push you down and you will not come back up. And everybody looked at me and they said, "Why are you doing this to us, Mike?" And I was like, "Get in the boat, it'll be fun." Hey, it's unrecoverable. When you grabbed the cross, it was unrecoverable. You did not come back from that. Now here's what it looks like in today's terms of being a disciple in picking up our cross. We hear this a lot of times, and you know, we say this, but I just ask yourself, do I mean it and do I live it? When you met Christ, if you've met Him, if Christ is in you, and you've been forgiven of your sins, and you've got a future hope, a future glory, you've got Christ living in you right now, here's what happened to you. The old you died. Amen? Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 20, you can jot that down and look at it on your own time. Paul says, "I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live." And if you know the rest of it, he goes on to say that it's Christ who lives in me. If I'm picking up my cross, that means it's not my life anymore. It means it's not about, and this is the part that I didn't want to say that I have to because it's kind of cliche, it's not about me. It's not about your desires. It's not about your wants. It's not about, we die. Did we grab that today, church? We die. When we do baptism, that we'll be doing in a few weeks because several people have came and said all that, the picture of somebody being placed under the water is a picture of the old person dying and being buried with Christ. Gone. It's not something we do just because we're Baptists. There's a scriptural reason behind it. We have died. Take up your cross. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question this morning. I've been asked this. The Holy Spirit has just pressed this deep within me as I prepare for this. How are we doing with that? I said, how are we doing with that? Who's living your life? I know that's tough. I know none of us, oh man, stop it and move on. How are we doing with it? Jesus said we've got to have an unrivaled love. We've got to have an unceasing cross-bearing. And then lastly here this morning, we've got to have an unreserved surrender. An unreserved surrender. Verse number 33, if you would. Jesus says, "So therefore any of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple." Our first condition of the unsurrendered or unrivaled love, which deals with our heart's affections, Our second one this morning is dealing with life's conduct, but now we're getting in to just our everyday life and where we go and what we have and what we do. Jesus says, if you're not willing to renounce all that you have, you cannot be my disciple. Now here again, for us, this one is challenging to grab. But because here's what I have learned, not from eyes-on, first-hand experience, but by God's grace, I've had the opportunity to get to know missionaries from around the world and talk with different people. And as a matter of fact, there was a Cambodian missionary that our church in West Virginia supported. He was stateside for a season, and he was at our church, and we were sitting down talking one day. And I asked him, I said, what's the biggest difference? Because he had been in the States enough to kind of be familiar with our culture and what things are like here in the U.S. He's originally from Cambodia, been trained in the States, went back to his home people to do ministry. That's where God had called him. And I asked him, I said, what is the biggest difference between the United States and being a part of the church and doing ministry here in Cambodia, where you are? And I can't do a Cambodian accent, but just imagine for a moment that it is one. And he said, oh, Preacher Mike, that's easy. That's very easy. Kind of broken English that he'd speak in. And I said, okay, what is it? He said, there's American poor and there's Cambodian poor. And I said, please explain, because it didn't register. He said, what you define as poor here in the States and in America, he said, would be very, 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 very wealthy in my home. He said, people that you say are without here in the U.S. would be very wealthy in my home. I said, please explain further. He said, in Cambodia, it's not uncommon, and we actually had some people, a team from our church there went and saw this and did some ministry and helped out. What we would know as a landfill in the United States is known as home for many Cambodians. It's where they live. It's where they grow up. And it's where they find their meals. And he just kept explaining. And he says, because one of the things that we helped out with as a church there is about once a month, this pastor and a group of people would go to these different little trash cities, as many people have nicknamed them. And they would go in there and they would take some rice and they would take some beans and they would take some fresh water and they would feed people a meal. And he said for many people, that one time a month when we show up and we give them a small bowl of rice and a small bowl of beans and a couple of bottles of water, he said that's probably the only good meal they'll get for that entire month. He said there's American poor, there's Cambodian poor. And what was horrible and kind of lightened the mood, what I was supposed to do after our conversation was over is I was supposed to take him out to eat, but I didn't have the heart to say, hey, you want to go to a restaurant and sit down and eat now? Because you hear that, it's just devastating to see what we have. And you say, all right, what are you getting at with this? First off, and please hear what I'm really saying and what I'm not saying. That there is nothing wrong with the provision that God has given us. Amen? That there's not. We oftentimes hear that, and we rail against, and I teach and preach against, because I don't believe it's biblical, the prosperity gospel that many charlatans that call themselves pastors preach today. But there's an equally dangerous one of the poverty gospel that says we're not supposed to have anything and enjoy life. The true answer is somewhere right in the middle. Looking at it this way, when Jesus said that we're supposed to surrender, it's not just a surrender of Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday. Amen? It's not just a surrender of getting up 15, 20 minutes early and reading my Bible this week, because preacher said we're supposed to be a disciple. It's not just, all right, I'll volunteer and serve a little bit just so I feel better. Jesus is saying everything that you have really is not yours. Give it up. Give it up. And don't look for, I want to caution us for something here, because I think we look for this and it's wrong. Many times we look for that big moment where we say, okay, God, I'm going to sell out to you. I'm going to give up everything. My family and I, we've been there and done that. I can tell you all about it. I can tell you about the fear of walking away from what you know is home, from walking away from what's stable to an unknown. I get it. I've been there. I think of equal importance is being willing to have a complete surrender tomorrow morning when you get up and walk out the door and do your ordinary, everyday life. I think what's just as important is when you go through your day-to-day relationships and day-to-day life, and the stuff we see is real mundane. I'm just saying, all right, God, in these moments today, when I go to work tomorrow, for those of you that are retired, and you get up and you go to the 3 other jobs that you didn't know you could have before you retired, and then from the retirees, because y'all are the busiest people I've ever met in my life, somewhere all the time. When you go to those 84 jobs that you have as a retiree, when you're spending that time with your grandchildren, students, when you go to school tomorrow morning, and we all hate Mondays, I get it. We go there surrendered, carrying our cross, living this stuff out. It's really, church, it's not that complicated to be a disciple. Don't miss what God is doing because you're looking for that big moment where you say, I surrender everything, God, and I just walk away from it. I'll give it to Him each and every day. Each day. Just wake up, say, all right, God, I surrendered. It's a new day. I know I'll mess it up. This is something that I would recommend you pray because this is what I have to pray. God, it's a new day. If I don't surrender right here, I'm going to mess it up. So just get me out of the way. Amen for the stubborn people, because that's what we'll do. Jesus said it's an absolute, it's an unreserved.